Back, you're still on Sunday edition with me, Akisa Wandera. Many thanks for staying with us. We're now on to our second topic, and this is the SRC new pay structure for state officers released last week. We've seen the president welcoming it, saying he will support it. We've seen the former chairperson of the Commission on Revenue Allocation, however, saying that this needs to be entrenched in the Constitution so that it is not tampered. But let's take a look at what's really this new structure says, especially for members of Parliament and MCAs. So starting with the president, he will be taking a pay cut from 1.6 million to 1.4 million. Members of Parliament sitting allowance for the plenary session, they're giving it up. That is 150,000 per month. So the sitting allowances have been abolished. The responsibility allowance of the 142,000 per month, as well as the car grant, which is 83,000. This is some of the things or the privileges that members of Parliament have lost in the new pay structure by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. The special parliamentary allowance of 80,000 per month has also been scrapped off for members of Parliament, as well as their salaries have also been downsized like those of all the other state officers. So members of Parliament in this new pay structure will be earning about 620,000, down from 710,000. So let's take a look at the House speakers. The Senate House Speaker earns 1.155 million shillings per month, and the Speaker of the National Assembly earns 1.555 million shillings per month. So speakers of both houses will now be earning that amount. Are currently earning that amount, and their deputies will be earning 924,000 Kenya shillings per month, and this amount is the same as what the cabinet secretaries will be earning, a standard payment of 924,000. The leader of majority party at the Senate will be earning 765,188, and in the National Assembly he will be earning 621,250. This new structure is expected to take effect in the 12th Parliament after the election. So MCAs will also be surrendering a number of privileges, just like members of Parliament. They will be surrendering 3.8 billion intended savings from counties of 4.8 billion shillings. And remember, it will also be good to mention that governors will be earning 924,000 and their deputies will be earning 621,250. And according to Sarah Serem, who is the chairperson of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, this new structure will save the country 8.8 billion Kenya shillings. President Uhuru Kenyatta, as I earlier mentioned, has already said that he will welcome this move. But a number of people, even the pundits, have said this definitely looks good on paper, but whether it will be implemented is another story altogether. Mutinda, what do you think?
I think that the fact that SRM has waited for these people to go on recess for her to announce this already tells you that she is very scared of these people. She's been in office for 5 years and nothing stopped her from giving these recommendations much earlier. But the fact that she waited for them to go home for her to do this already tells you that she is scared of them. And number two is that I like some recommendations that she's given, because some of the allowances that these members are very ridiculous. I happen to have had the privilege to visit the South African Parliament, and I noted something that was very, and it's a much bigger economy, it's a much richer country than our country. This issue of reimbursable, there's something they call the reimbursable mileage allowance.
Yes.
Actually, if there's one allowance that is abused, it is that one. There are people who earn more than 2 million shillings per month based on that reimbursable, and the ones who come from the northeastern frontiers. In South Africa, every member is entitled to 2 air tickets, two-way. So that it is assumed that it is yours and your spouse. That is at the beginning of the session. They have a free parking at the airport, so that they don't have to incur expenses for leaving their cars there. And that is what the state provides. Instead of giving them enough money to fuel their vehicles, they give them air tickets, that at the beginning of the session you have an air ticket for you and your spouse, and at the end of the session you also have the same. And that is influenced by the number of breaks they will have, so that whenever there is a break that gives you enough time to go back, then they give you an air ticket. In this country, the air travel is such that we have, as in, there is nowhere we can't get these small planes to get in any corner of this country. Why don't we do that? It is going to be far much cheaper than fuel in these vehicles. So one of the things that I noted about that is that it has done away with the reimbursable mileage allowance. That is commendable. They need to really put their foot down on that particular one, so that even if they are going to be renegotiations, that should not be form part of the renegotiations. Let's find a way, a standard way of having our members move from Nairobi to their areas that is cost effective and that is not subject to abuse, like has been the case with the reimbursable mileage. Actually, the parliamentarians themselves have been fighting. For your information, those who come from Nairobi don't get that money. And those who come from Kiambu and the areas that are within Nairobi, they don't get that money. Yet they are colleagues. And do you know the worst bit has been the evidence of movement has been, the threshold is so low that actually most don't even make those travels, but they still get reimbursed. And this is actually one of the people who wrote, it is a fact. The MP for Makadara, the current MP for Makadara, Honorable Benson Mutura, was one of the people who wrote to the SRC complaining about the reimbursable mileage allowance. Because even as a member of parliament, he felt like, no, this is honestly wastage of public money.
So for you, the mileage part, you're good with it.
I am good with it. And now that we are still talking about SRC, I would want them to be proactive in the way they do their jobs. Not for them to wait for teachers to have their negotiations, finalize, sign a CBA, then come out and say that they don't agree with that. The nurses, the doctors, you know, they have been coming out more as an hindrance. Yet they are the people who should be leading these to ensure that it is done within acceptable, because for them is to ensure that our wage bill is manageable. So they need to be offering guidance as these negotiations go on, and not to wait for them to be concluded, then come in and look as if they are the spoilers. I think that is not the spirit with which we would want them to work.
Husband.
I think, just like Kavemba is saying, the fact that SRC did this when Parliament was already out of session tells a lot where the power lies. We know that this is something that parliamentarians can come and immediately they are sworn in, they reverse everything. You know, and they have the powers to do that. I mean, you'd blame SRC for this because they focus more on parliamentarians rather than being proactive in ensuring that our wage bill is manageable in all the other sectors, you know, including finding a basis to ensure that even in the private sector, a graduate is paid what is commensurate to what they studied in campus and what they are giving, so that there is a basis, that we don't see this as a blockbuster thing that you want to fight the big fish, you want to fight the parliamentarians. And if they were doing that, then it would be justified. Even the public would be on their side when they slash the allowances for members of parliament. But I think, having said that, it's also important to note that even if they slash the salaries, I don't think it's a question of how much our MPs are paid. The question is, how much power do they wield? Because not many people go to parliament, not many people go for these elective positions because of the salary. I mean, most of the governors, for instance, are much more wealthy than the amount of money they're going to make in the next 5 years. What they invest in the campaign, for instance, is much more than the salaries that they will accumulate in the next 5 years. So what does this tell us about the salaries? That there must be a proactive way of making these positions very unattractive to people who don't have the interest of serving. And I think SRC cannot do that by just slashing the salaries. They have to be a lot more proactive. They have to sensitize the public so much, because again, MPs would come back and tell you that the reason why we are asking for more money is because the electorate has been conditioned to ask for handouts. So every time I go to church, you know, anytime an MP gets into a church, in most of the constituencies in Kenya, there is an impromptu Harambee.
Yes.
You know, and you can easily tell that the expectation that the public has basically calls for a higher pay. So it starts with SRC being proactive and letting the public understand that, the handout that you're given in church is not as good as a politician who would go to parliament, legislate, represent, and oversight in such a way that you won't even need to conduct that harambe. And that is, I think, one of the key things that they should focus on.
Okay, this must...
Maybe what SRC have done is actually a waste of time and a waste of resources for the following reasons. Number one, the core public service is poorly paid. Because, members of parliament actually do not fall rightly in the core public service. You get a messenger working at the Ministry of Finance being paid 15,000. How do you expect such kind of a person to live in Nairobi, take the kids to school, take care of medical facilities, and meet so many obligations? And my view would have been that SRC would have given very serious recommendations to increase the pay for the core public servants so that they can get a decent wage. Like, for instance, with the salary that a typical public servant gets without any benefit of their mortgages, cannot even buy a property in Nairobi. We need to even triple, or even, I don't know how to say it, even give them 10 times higher, so that the public servants get motivated to deliver. And then for the members of the National Assembly and the Senate, we need to reduce their salaries to the bare minimum. Because in more mature democracies, people go to public service or they go to elective positions not because they want to use it as a factor of production, but because they want to contribute in society. Like, for instance, there's a city in New Zealand where I've had the opportunity to visit. The local mayor is a professor of planning at a university. So he goes to school the entire day, and then he goes back to the county offices in the evening after work. Because what he's contributing is his subject matter expertise. But we've got a core public service which is well paid. Now, when you come to the sitting allowances that we give our members of the National Assembly, it's a waste of time. Because you are paid a huge salary to go to the National Assembly. It's not as if you are told that we give you a certain amount of money to stand outside, and then when you go to the National Assembly in the plenary when you sit, then we give you an additional amount of money.
And that's really, the same argument that the SRC gave.
Yeah, and you wonder, where has SRC been all along? Why are they coming at this point in time? And of course, they keep on getting it wrong. The solution to the high wage bill in Kenya is not reducing salaries, is making the economy grow, so that at the end of the day, the wage bill becomes a very small portion of our entire expenditure in the economy. But of course, as a nation, there is a mediocrity all over. That's why now we are saying, let's reduce salary so that we reduce on the costing.
But is it not a step towards the right direction? It's
a step in the wrong direction, because you are reducing the salaries of the members of the National Assembly, not the core public service which is supposed to catalyze our economy. Part of the reason why you've never heard of policemen complaining of poor pay, most public servants don't complain of poor pay, is because a number of them are busy stealing. For instance, you've never heard of engineers in Kenya complaining about poor pay. They're in charge of the road projects. They know how to fish out resources. You've never heard of policemen complaining of poor pay. All of them want to join the traffic police departments. That's how they get their salaries. But if we give them very good incentives, and then we kill corruption, and then we give them performance indicators, we'd be in a good place. Like, for instance, the members of the National Assembly, I would challenge you whether you can actually even name 50 members of the National Assembly today. Probability of you naming 50 members of the National Assembly is almost zero. Why? They don't even go to the National Assembly to do anything. They make a technical appearance. They don't have key performance indicators. And yet, right now, there's a crisis. Suffering from food insecurity. Kenya, we don't have UNGA. Kavemba would disagree with that. We don't have UNGA. But we have a parliamentary committee in charge of agriculture. So what does this parliamentary committee do on a daily basis? They don't come up with policies. They don't hold the minister responsible, or rather the CS responsible for agriculture accountable. You've got a committee in charge of defense and foreign relations. You have Al-Shabaab mourning people, killing people every day in Lamu. Where are they right now? They don't have performance indicators. And the role of Serem, she's supposed to come up with solid policies to attract, retain, and reward core public servants so that we go to the next level.
There's something important that the former chairperson of the Commission on Revenue Allocation said, Mika Chiserem, that for this to work, it has to be entrenched in the Constitution so that we avoid it being tampered by either members of Parliament or a president. Do you agree with that, Mutinda?
I really would have wanted to know where exactly it's coming from, because the SRC by itself is a constitutional body. And again, it is very clear that one of the things that Parliament cannot do is to decide on its remuneration. So, most of the things Parliament does is through bullying. It's not that they have the support of the law. They just use the powers they have to intimidate, because you need to understand that even SRM's budget is approved by Parliament. So when SRM comes down hard on them, they have a way of getting back, and that's what they've been doing.
And probably that's where Mika SRM comes from, that if this would be in the constitution, then it reduces their levels of bullying their way through to get their...
It's also about assertiveness of the other institutions, because the extent to which they can also bully as a limit. It's only that most people get cowed, yet they are on the right. So these other institutions need to also assert themselves more, because that is the checks and balance system that we wanted to create and that we envisaged when we passed the constitution. We didn't expect one arm called Parliament to lord it over the rest, even in areas where they have no business interfering with. So it is upon these other institutions to assert themselves and not to accept to be bullied, because even bullying, like I said, we can go to court, and the courts will, as much as the Parliament has even threatened the courts to even reducing their budget, because again, even the budget for the judiciary again is approved by we need to get to a point that all institutions assert themselves to a point that no institution thinks that it can lord over the rest, because we actually the last 5 years have risked us having a parliamentary dictatorship, because there are very many things that they've bullied and that they've had their way, yet in the real sense and in law they should have listened to the other institutions that were trying to put them in check. So that is one of the things that we need to address also going forward.
Akisa Wandera, it's about political goodwill. I recall when President Kenyatta took office, it occurred to him that Kenya has got so many parastatals that do absolutely nothing. So he set up a committee. One of the co-chairmen was Abdikadir Mohammed. So they came up with very good policies on rationalization. They were supposed to, kill a number of parastatals, merge a number of parastatals. But did the president actually implement those resolutions? It did not. There was no political goodwill from President Kenyatta to do that, because you've got so many parastatals, and the only funding they get from Treasury is to pay salaries and buy newspapers and make a cup of tea. They don't have a development budget, so they do nothing. So essentially what the president is doing is creating employment opportunities for their family and friends. And I'm not sure whether the current cabinet have signed performance contracts, so that we know, like for instance, if you're Amina Mohammed, you're in charge of our foreign affairs, what are your key deliverables? At the end of the year, how do we rate whether or not you've been a success? If you're talking about economic diplomacy, what is your principal secretary, what is he supposed to be doing? Now, if we don't have key performance indicators, if we don't have the energy or the guts to scale down the number of people doing nothing in the public service, then we'll be wasting a lot of time. Because people go to the office in the morning, they read newspapers, they engage in corruption, they go back home. While people require services from the public sector are getting absolutely nothing.
All right.
Yeah, I think I agree with Mika SRM, because you look at the country that we live in, there is a sense in which you realize that we don't have that sense of responsibility to the state. And for parliamentarians, that political goodwill is non-existent. And therefore, whatever he's trying to say is that there are things that we just need to entrench in the constitution, especially things that are susceptible to bullying by parliamentarians. And salary is one of them. That the moment you say that the salary of politicians cannot be determined by politicians, but you have an institution that will determine that, and Parliament still has the leeway to bully them, then you run the risk of having Parliament reign on all these institutions. And therefore, his point is, why can't you just entrench it in the Constitution that a member of Parliament will not be paid an amount that exceeds this? And I think that is where parliamentarians have always gotten a safety valve, that when they come to Parliament, they'll say, when SRM did this, we had already started the process of being MPs. And the reason why we wanted was because we knew what we were getting into. So midstream, as we were campaigning, let me say, it was like 4 weeks to the elections, he changed the contract that we were getting into. And they'll have a basis for that. But if you entrench it in the Constitution, anyone who wants to be the governor will know that this is what I'm going for. Anyone who wants to be the MP will know this is what I'm going for. But there's another thing that Mika SRM said, and I respect Mika SRM for what he has done for this country. He said that Kenyans need to be a lot more cautious on who they vote in as an MCA. And maybe that should be reiterated further, that most of these governors are going for the position not necessarily to serve, but they'll have an oversight body in terms of the County National Assembly that, one, is very ignorant of their functions, and second, they know their oversight role, they'll use that oversight role as a conduit for corruption with the governor. And therefore, Kenyans need to be very wary.
All right, let's take another break here on Sunday edition. Coming back, how prepared is the IEBC to run the elections or conduct the elections in just 23 days on August the 8th? We'll be back with that discussion. Don't go too far.